Greetings, everyone. And I wanted to speak today about Islam and how I was introduced to Islam over the course of my life. I was born with the name Bradley. I was adopted. About 2 months later, I was given the name Clark. I was raised in a all-white suburb of Buffalo. And when I say all-white, we're talking probably 97% white. Even today, there's more minorities that live there, but even today, you're still talking probably over 90% white, even today. But anyhow, those who aren't familiar with Buffalo is a poor city. It's one of the poorest cities out of the major cities in America, and it's very segregated. So that's how I grew up. I always knew there were differences amongst the races, which some people may say is a bad thing, but there's some good in that also, because I was never fooled into thinking we were all the same. I always knew there were differences. So that's a good thing. As far as my understanding of Islam, my parents made sure not to teach me anything about Islam. Like I said, I grew up in an all-white area. Both of my parents were black, by the way, but they chose to keep all black pride, all that type of stuff away from me. Even my father, for example, my father was born in 1932 in Detroit. So he was literally raised in Detroit while the teachings were getting started. You know, Temple number 1 is in Detroit. So my father knew about Islam. He just chose not to share it with me. And unfortunately, this is true for many of our people. Many of our people, they were introduced to Islam, you know, from the messenger, from Malcolm X, and they went out of their way to make sure that their children never got the teachings. And I know there's something biblical where the children, the sins of the father get passed down to the children, and there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that. I'm a living example of that. When there's so many things that children today, adults today should know, but don't know because their parents or grandparents chose not to teach them. But anyhow, I went to college in Albany, New York, and that's when everything changed for me. I'll never forget my very first class was a black professor. Just that alone blew my mind. Never had a black teacher before. And the class was African American Studies. And I remember that was like a filler class. You had to have so many classes in a semester just to be labeled a full-time student. And, you know, I never had any intention of taking African American Studies. It was, I just needed a class to get so many credits. And that was my very first college course. Black professor blew my mind. Learning about Black history blew my mind. And I never looked back. That was a big turning point in my life. And I actually heard Minister Farrakhan later say that going to school, paying to learn about yourself is criminal. And that's true, because all these things that I paid to learn. I mean, we're not even talking about Islam. We're just talking about black studies, black history, all these things that I paid to learn about. I never should have had to pay to learn about any of that stuff. That stuff is the things that your parents are supposed to teach you while you're a child. It truly is criminal that even today, some of our people are paying just to learn about themselves. But anyhow, at this point, when I just got into college, I still didn't know anything about Islam. Never heard anything about Islam. Never, where I grew up, never heard about the Nation of Islam. Never heard about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I never even heard of Malcolm X. Never heard about any of those people. And it was strange. I was working at a mobile gas station, and there was a white guy named Steve. He was an unusual person. He had a lot of white pride. He would talk that white pride stuff, but he would still talk to me, and he would always say things like, you know, why do your people do this? Why do your people do that? Basically what he was saying is like, you know, how come black people don't have more self-respect than they do? You know, why are black people, you know, why do black people look down on themselves? Why don't they just have more self-respect? And make a long story short, he's the one that one day told me about the Nation of Islam. Never even heard of it. And of course, he thought there was something wrong with me, that he knew about it and I didn't. And I remember he picked up the phone. We're at work. He dialed the operator in Chicago, got the phone number for the Nation of Islam, called right then and there on the phone and asked him for a Final Call newspaper. And they sent it. They actually sent it. And that was my first introduction, if you will, to Islam. Was that, as strange as it may sound, that's was my first introduction. But then later on at the school, I met a brother named Sincere Allah, a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths. Many people call them the 5 Percenters. And you know, Albany, there's a lot of members there that are part of the Nation of Gods and Earths. And because it's called Allah Born, a lot of people just think the Nation of Gods and Earths are in the 5 boroughs of New York. But Allah Born in Albany, New York, there's a lot of them there too as well. And I learned from quite a few of the brothers there, you know, the supreme alphabet, supreme mathematics. You know, it really opened my eyes to a lot of things which I had no knowledge of. Interesting thing, at this time, I was between learning about Islam and learning about, just black history, black studies in general. I was spending more time getting knowledge of self or learning about myself than I was studying the schoolwork, the school books that I was supposed to be learning. And my grades suffered a little bit, but I wasn't bad overall. I got like a 2.7 when it was all said and done. My history, initially I went to school for business, but like I said, once I learned about African American studies, that changed everything. That changed my whole trajectory. So African American studies wound up being my my major. Now in that, I was really good. I got like a 3.7 GPA in that. Because that's where my heart was. That's where my mind was. I wanted to learn about myself. I wanted to know about my people. And Islam was a part of that as well. You know, learning what I was learning from the nation of gods and earths. I remember seeing Farrakhan. I think this probably would have been like 1989, 1990. He was speaking at SUNY Oswego, which is probably like 3 hours. It's like a 3 hour drive from where we were. And I remember that's all we knew. We just knew it was SUNY Oswego, which is in Oswego, New York. There was about 4 brothers. We all hopped in my car and we just went. We had no idea where we were going. We just went. And we got there and we saw Farrakhan. And that was a big turning point as well. And at that time, that's when, Farrakhan was, keeping to the messenger's teachings. And it was quite an experience. And there was a lot of exploration going on when I was in school back then. We were learning about everything. Learned about Yahweh ben Yahweh, Dr. York, like I said, the nation of gods and earths. I mean, bro, and we would spend, some people on a Friday night or Saturday night would just go out and drink and do whatever. I admit I did some of that as well, but there were many nights when we would just 5, 6, 7 brothers. We would spend the whole night just building, just talking about this or that, all pertaining to our people. Also talking about Islam as well. But one of the things that kind of separated me from some of the other brothers were I always wanted to go to the root. I always wanted to go to the root of the situation. And even with the nation of gods and earths, I mean, it became, the brothers were all, Brother Clarence 13X, Father Allah, this, that, and the other. But it became clear to me, it was like, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the root. And whenever I would bring that up, I mean, nobody would say I was wrong, but they just kind of dismissed it. And I never understood that. So that's one of the major differences between me and some of the other brothers. I wanted to go to the root, and the root was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So my foundation was the books. When I started gravitating towards the messenger, I got into the books that I can get my hands on at that time. The Message to the Black Man, basically some people refer to it, the 5 books of Moses, Message to the Black Man, Our Savior Has Arrived, Fall of America, How to Eat to Live, book 1 and 2. And then I also later got into the Theology of Time. But my foundation was the books compiled by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I even later, I'm not even sure, it must have been a newspaper article or something. I found out about Crow at that time. They must have been brand new. The Coalition for the Remembrance of Elijah. And once again, only thing I knew is they were in Chicago. I just hopped in my car and I went. And I found them. And Brother Munir Muhammad, he was, very, very good brother. I miss that brother. He showed me all around Chicago. He showed me all the different buildings, different structures, the clothing factory, what is now called Mas Mariam. It wasn't called that when the messenger had it, but all these different temple properties that they had, told me stories. It just really made me feel good, filled my spirit up. I was like, wow, this is what our people had. We had a thriving nation at one time. And even took me into his home. We had dinner together. I met his brother, Halif. The building, the Coalition for Remembrance of Elijah, was like this big empty room, had one of those TVs that we had in school back in the day. And you could just, there was really nobody else in there at that time. It was Brother Munir and I was the only student, if you will, that was there. But I got to see all these videos. They had all these videos of the messengers and all these audio tapes of the messenger, and it confirmed, my suspicions that at that time Farrakhan was subtly changing the messenger's teachings. Subtle changes, but I noticed it, and around this time I left Albany. I was living in Buffalo, and I was at this was Farrakhan's Muhammad Mosque, number 23 in Buffalo, 5 Walden, and one of the things that I noticed is many of the brothers that were under Farrakhan, their foundation was Farrakhan. Their foundation wasn't the messenger. And that's how come I was able to notice certain things and the other brothers didn't. Because my foundation was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. My foundation was his books, his teachings. So when I saw Farrakhan do certain things, I was able to spot it right away. I was like, these are not the messenger's teachings, just subtle things. And also, like I said, when I went to the Coalition for Remembrance of Elijah, it just helped confirmed what I had suspected. And I'm still in Buffalo at this time, and shortly after, my realizing that there's being changes made in the nation under Farrakhan, that's when I read this article, an editorial in the Buffalo Challenger. The Buffalo Challenger is a black newspaper in Buffalo. It was written by Sister Rashida, and she was talking about the United Nation of Islam, which was headed by Royal. And there were many things. One of the things that I found fascinating about Royal is Royal was, he said he was a law in person, and he would answer any question from anybody. Now you have to truly be who you say you are, or a crazy person, to even attempt something like that. But Royal had many tapes, many articles, and at that time, everything he was saying was mathematically correct. I couldn't find an error in it. So I eventually joined. There was a study group in Buffalo. It was like Sister Rashida, Sister Lavette, Brother Cheyenne. So I was part of that study group in Buffalo. I signed my letter, Clark X, under Royal, 1994, 1995. And I actually saw Royal in 1996 at Independence Day in Maryland. I remember that because that was the same year the movie came out, because we all went down, the study group from Buffalo. We drove down there together to that Independence Day. We actually saw that movie Independence Day. That's how come I remember it. I think it must have been the same weekend. And anyhow, I've always listened to the tapes and read the center pages and the articles by Royal, but later on, with as far as Royal is concerned, let me just back up for a second. When I noticed that Farrakhan was changing some of the messenger's teachings, it's very disheartening. It hurts, because it's like, why would somebody do something like that? For those of us that love the messenger and what he stood for, when you see somebody elevate themselves to such a position, and they're supposed to be elevating the nation and elevating our people, and then they deviate, it hurts. And with Royal, I saw the same thing. He built up the nation, lifted himself up, lifted up our people. He taught many wonderful things, mathematical thinking being one of them. Clearly, the brother's extremely knowledgeable, extremely wise. But there were some things that he said that didn't come true. Like, for example, he talked about the 100 Royal. I'm talking about Royal talked about the 144,000 being those from the first resurrection that he was going to get and gather. He didn't do that. He was supposed to be presented by Farrakhan to the Nation of Islam. All this was supposed to happen by the year 2000. Lake of Fire, all that type of stuff by the year 2000. Obviously, none of that has happened. And like I said, the brother is very wise, very knowledgeable. But if you're Allah in person, I don't know how you can make a mistake like that, or mistakes like that. So I kept my distance, hoping there'd be some answers, some clarification as to, how something like this could happen. And then it just kind of went from bad to worse. When they changed their names from the United Nation of Islam to the Value Creators, that's when I really knew something was wrong, because that's not even mathematical. And then it got even worse, and they changed their name from Value Creators to the Promise Keepers. So something had seriously gone off the rails. Royal, something happened. And once again, it hurts. That always hurts. When you put your faith in someone. And that's really the lesson to be taken from this. When you put your faith in someone and they let you down, it hurts. Just like with Farrakhan, many people got wrapped up in the man and not what he was saying or doing. Now, I recognize that there was a problem, like many brothers and sisters recognized there was a problem and they left. Now, unfortunately, there's, the ones that truly got wrapped up in the person, they never left. they're still there. Now, after this, along came Positron, and I was reading his articles on Facebook. This was roughly November 2018 until February 2019. And same thing, very knowledgeable brother, saying a lot of stuff, couldn't find any fault in it. And in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, like, you know, Allah, why would he raise the messenger? Why would he give us all this knowledge of self, give us all this hope, and then just everything collapses? Now, we knew the nation was going to collapse, but it, you know, it's supposed to rise again, never to fall again. But, you know, then Royal comes along, and then that falls. It's like, you know, Minister Farrakhan reminded the people, you know, he stayed strong for 10 years, then he deviated. I mean, it's like, what's going on? It's like, why is this happening? So when Positron came along, I'm like, well, you know, who knows? Maybe he's got the answers. And like I said, I was reading his articles that he was posting on Facebook for those few months. In March of 2019, he asked me to come out to Baltimore, and I did. And after a couple of weeks there, I realized he was not who he claimed to be, and I left. Everyone has to be tested. I just look at that as just another test for myself. Everybody's test is different, but my suspicions about Positron were later confirmed when I found out about what happened to Royal, and I also got to read the question and answers from the original law. These are things I didn't know about, but it answered a lot of my questions that I had. So why would Allah place so much knowledge in Royal, knowing he would change course? I mean, Allah knew this was going to happen. Why would he do that? I don't know. I don't know why brothers falsely elevate their stature, trying to win followers. That's why I say I'm not Allah. I'm not a scientist's son. I'm not an angel. I'm not a messenger. I'm a brother. And I have no problem saying that. You know, why do some brothers feel that they have to be something that they're not? I know when I was younger, you know, some guys would feel like they had to lie to a girl to get that girl to take interest in him. I never understood that. Just be yourself. I don't know why some brothers claim the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings and then go against them. I don't know why some brothers do that either. You know, I have no interest in being something that I'm not. I just want freedom, justice, equality, Islam. I want to save the planet. I want to remove evil from the planet. I want there to be peace on earth. And all this that I have gone through, can't put your faith in an individual. Our faith or our trust has to be in Allah. Allah is not a man nor a woman. Allah is the all in all. It is true that Allah came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. But as we all know, there was Allah before Master Fard Muhammad was born. The black man as a whole is Allah. There's fractions of Allah in each and every one of us. But we should never, ever get caught up in following a man. We need to follow the teachings, follow the math, follow the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, the principles of creation. That won't let us down. We are the ones we've been waiting for.